Richard Maritzer. I'm the ADA coordinator for the city of Pittsburgh. And in that responsibility, I both make sure that all the city's facilities, programs, and activities are accessible to people of all disabilities. I also staff the City of Pittsburgh Allegheny County Task Force on Disabilities, which is a 13-panel member panel of Consumer of Disability Services, appointed by the mayor and the county executive. We'll see a number of speakers, all of whom are very, very involved in the disability community, most of whom have disabilities, although there are a couple of speakers who are involved but don't have disabilities. They probably will see some of the march, which was a very short march intentionally so that everyone could participate. Ever since I've been in this position, some group has done an anniversary event. It's been a different group every year, and every year I'm involved to some extent. This year, the Access Mob Meetup decided to hold the event. And I've been involved in the Access Mob Meetup since its inception. What this is it's a voluntary group of people who get together to do projects in support of the disability community, most of whom have disabilities. So when they put together this committee, of course, I was on the mailing list and I got very involved, more involved than I've ever been before. The idea was we were going to do something we'd never done before, which is a march. We've had rallies before, but never a march. And it was very exciting, very time-consuming, a lot of work, but it was a fabulous event. This is just a small part of what I do to facilitate the disability community, and we're involved in a lot of other programs, including, for the first time ever, a citywide business accessible entrance directory, which the community has really, really loved, which will allow people to determine where they can go out to be with their friends. So we're working very, very hard on that. And I expect that to be out sometime in late summer, early fall. So keep an eye out for that.
So now I have 3 proclamations that I will read. Yes. Heather. So, just hold it up for everyone to see. So, a proclamation from Rich Fitzgerald, Allegheny County Executive. Whereas the Americans with Disabilities Act is one of the most comprehensive pieces of civil rights legislation and was signed into law by President George H.W. Bush on July 26, 1990. This marks the 27th anniversary of its enactment. And whereas the ADA is committed to supporting human rights and basic freedoms of individuals with disabilities, through the law's 5 titles, individuals are ensured equal opportunity in employment, public entities, commercial accommodations, telecommunications, and transportation. And whereas the Bureau of Labor Statistics job report indicates that as of June 2017, the employment to population ratio for working age people in America with disabilities has increased for the 15th consecutive month. 29.8% are either employed or actively looking for work, and indicates increasing social and economic engagement. And whereas in Allegheny County, our efforts have always been focused at helping all of our residents. The county has sponsored a special needs registry to allow those with disabilities to share appropriate information with 911 in the event of an emergency. The county has hosted numerous job fairs and events around the employment of those with disabilities. A full evaluation of the county's offerings was completed, outlining what changes could be made for county services to be accommodating, and the county is a proud partner in the Career Transition Project for individuals with disabilities. And whereas Allegheny County is home to approximately 159,272 individuals that have a disability, with the passage of the ADA, services offered by the county and organizational supports in our community, the commitment to improve quality of life and enrich social integration for the 13.1% with a disability is unabating. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Allegheny County Executive Rich Fitzgerald, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim July 26, 2017 as the Americans with Disabilities Act Day in Allegheny County. We next have a proclamation from the City Council of Pittsburgh. Whereas, passed on July 26, 1990, and modeled after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities and ensures accessibility in public life. And whereas the ADA safeguards participation, inclusion, and accommodations in employment, education, transportation, and communications, and guarantees access to state and local government programs and services. And whereas, predating the passage of the ADA, the City of Pittsburgh has been a leader in inclusion through programs such as the One-Step Program, which provides grants to business owners to remove physical barriers for individuals with disabilities, and the Start on Success Program, which offers work experiences to high school and college students with disabilities, which a lot of our volunteers today are part of that program, so applause for them. And whereas the city staffs the City-County Task Force on Disabilities, a 13-member panel of advocates, service providers, and consumers appointed jointly by the mayor and Allegheny County Executive to provide a voice for individuals with disabilities within the City of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County government. And whereas the city works with organizations such as Access Mob Pittsburgh, Community Living and Support Services, or CLASS, the University of Pittsburgh's Human Engineering Research Laboratory, or HURL, Hearing Loss Association of America Pittsburgh Chapter, Golden Triangle Council for the Blind, Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission, and other organizations to support and enhance their work with and for the disability community. And whereas the City of Pittsburgh departments work tirelessly to install more hearing loops and rug tiles to create accessible city facilities and build more accessible curb cuts in our neighborhoods each year. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the City of Pittsburgh celebrates the 27th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act and all the advancements made by and for individuals with disabilities, and reaffirms its commitment to creating a city that can be enjoyed by all without restriction. And be it further resolved that the Council of the City of Pittsburgh does hereby declare July 26, 2017 to be ADA 27th Anniversary Day in the City of Pittsburgh. And our final proclamation is from Mayor Bill Peduto. Whereas, passed on July 26, 1990, and modeled after the iconic Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities and ensures accessibility in public life. And whereas the City of Pittsburgh has always been a leader in inclusion through programs such as the One-Step Program, which provides grants to business owners to remove physical barriers for individuals with disabilities, and the Start on Success Program, which offers high school and college students with disabilities with work experience. And whereas the City of Pittsburgh proudly staffs the City-County Task Force on Disabilities, a 13-member panel of advocates, service providers, and consumers appointed jointly by the mayor and the county executive to provide a voice for individuals with disabilities within Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. And whereas the City of Pittsburgh works with organizations such as Access Mob Pittsburgh, Community Living and Support Services, or CLASS, the University of Pittsburgh's Human Engineering Research Laboratory, or HURL, Hearing Loss Association of America's Pittsburgh Chapter, Golden Triangle Council for the Blind, Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission, and other organizations to support and enhance their work with and for the community, or the disability community. And whereas the City of Pittsburgh's Department of Public Works continues to work to improve the city's dated infrastructure, each year replacing and improving ADA access to facilities, parks, and public spaces. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, William Peduto, Mayor of the City of Pittsburgh, do honor this landmark piece of legislation that helps so many Pittsburgh residents by declaring Wednesday, July 26, 2017, ADA 27th Anniversary Day here in our most livable city of Pittsburgh. I stand before you today as one of the disabled people who were dragged out of their wheelchairs in Columbus, Ohio during a recent protest to save our Medicaid. It was one of the most terrifying moments of my life, but I would do it again and again and again to fight for my rights and those of my disabled siblings. It was the fall heard around the world as media outlets as disparate as The Rachel Maddow Show, Esquire Magazine, and Huffington Post featured the footage, which was akin to photographs of police releasing dogs on civil rights protesters in the 1960s. As a result, the world was awakened to the inhumanity of those police toward people with disabilities and the passion of the disability advocates for what they were fighting for. 27 years ago today, the Americans with Disabilities Act was signed into law. There's a famous photo of that moment out on the White House lawn where George H.W. Bush is smiling as he signs the bill. And those great advocates, Evan Kemp, Justin Dart, Reverend Harold Wilk, and Swift Perino, are standing around him watching almost reverently. That single signature opened up an entire world of possibilities to people with disabilities, enabling us to live independent lives. The theme of this year's celebration has come to center around something said by Richard Meritzer, our city's esteemed ADA coordinator. We need to celebrate how far we have come and to energize ourselves as to how far we still need to go. And I hope that's what we do today. We have come so far in these past 27 years. Just the fact that we are all here today means that we have sidewalk curb cuts to cross the street, kneeling buses with ramps, paratransit, adaptive telecommunications to spread the word, Braille and large print programs, and sign language interpreters. These were only dreams 30 years ago, and first and foremost, we need to celebrate the advocates who paved the way for the ADA. I think of Ed Roberts, one of the founding fathers of the modern disability rights movement in the U.S. I think of Ed Roberts, one of the founding fathers of the modern disability rights movement in the U.S., fighting to become the first profoundly disabled person to attend college at Berkeley. I think of Celestine Tate Harrington, who in 1976 made national headlines for having to go to court to win back custody of her child by proving that she could provide for their needs despite having no use of her limbs. I think of the Gang of 19 in Denver, Colorado, who went out on the Monday after the 4th of July holiday weekend in 1978 and blocked all major traffic arteries into the city in protest over a lack of accessible buses in Denver. This group later went on to found the disability activist group known as ADAPT, which I am a proud part of. We also need to celebrate how amazing we ourselves are, so look around you. Each and every one of you is incredible because each and every one of you has the power to change the world. Yet we are not done. There's still a lot to do to make this world accessible to all. I've often said that in a world full of ramps and automatic doors, I would not be considered disabled. Unfortunately, we don't yet live in a world full of ramps and automatic doors, or audible crossing signals, or visual fire alarm systems. We still hear stories of negative encounters between police and people with disabilities, of service animals being rejected from public venues, and of barriers between people with communication disorders and with those without. Today we have 7 local advocates speaking to us about community organizing, mental health, invisible disabilities, parenting a child with a disability, the intersection of race and disability, employment, and healthcare. We also have Representative Dan Miller, founder of Dan's Fair, giving a keynote address. And I would like to welcome Mayor Peduto is in fact here, so welcome Mayor Peduto. Thank you for coming. And thank you for the declaration, it was beautiful. So I hope that everyone here today is inspired by the words of our speakers. So Our first speaker is Janet Evans, who will be speaking about community organizing. She has been an active member of her community's tenant leadership and an advocate for the rights of both low-income individuals and persons with disabilities. Janet currently serves on the Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh Board of Commissioners as the Vice Chair, as well as on a host of committees and boards based in the City of Pittsburgh, including Community Living and Support Services, or CLASS, and the City County Task Force on Disabilities. So everyone, Janet Evans.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to tell you how I became an advocate. I started in my 20s when I wanted to get out of an institution. I read the Bill of Rights on one of the institution's wall, and I said, I'm almost 21, and I have the right to sign myself out. But then people were telling me, you're going to need help and accessible housing. And lo and behold, UCP at that time, it was now CLASS, they came to the Institute for some programs for their residents. Anyway, what happened was I went to the director at that time and said, I want out of here. I talked to the caseworker, and anyway, at the age of 22, March of '76, I got out into a community living arrangement, and that's what started my whole life. A couple months later, I got married, and a couple of years later, I went to community college where I earned an associate's degree in behavioral sciences. But anyway, I became a leader, an active leader. When after I got married, I helped start Access with a bunch of other leaders and groups. I wasn't the only one. And Access is very successful. It's in its 38 years now. I was able to do what I wanted to do in my life. And I just didn't sit on my bum and let the world come on. I joined in and helped everybody else to get what they wanted. We got attendant care, yes. Also, the Port Authority got lifts on their buses, so now we can go everywhere. When the ADA was signed, it opened a lot of doors for a lot of people. You know, it's telling restaurants, please become accessible for those who want to eat, because we also have an income and we love to spend money. And remember, so anyhow, to make a long story short, my time is almost up. But I want you to use your voices. Use the media, TV, radio, letters to your representatives. Don't be afraid to speak up. You do have a voice, just like I did. Even I asked the mayor in a class one time, I said, when am I going to be appointed to the housing board? And he says, okay, I'm going to look at your resume. A week later, I was on the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority. So I got the mayor. So I'm happy and thank you, Mayor Perdido. So anyway, any dreams you have or any boards you want to be on, send your resume in to the area that you want to be on the boards, because they do not discriminate, but they do work with you. The housing board that I belong to, they work with me, they listen to me. I give them all kinds of suggestions and questions galore. So I do help in my own way for accessible housing for everyone, even the veterans and the homeless. Believe me, I do not let any stone unturned. So remember, use your voice. Today is a celebration. Thank you. Was that okay?
You want to go down the stairs? I think it's the same height, so thank you. Well, thank you so much, Janet. Our next speaker is Alyssa Seifer, who will be speaking about mental health. Alyssa is a mental health advocate, public speaker, and self-appointed professional crazy person. Alyssa runs an organization called Inside Our Minds, which works to build community narratives on mental illness through storytelling. She also works at the National Alliance on Mental Illness's Keystone chapter and serves as a project assistant for Stand Together, an anti-stigma initiative in Pittsburgh area schools. If my chair will let me back up. There we go.
Well, thank you, Elisa, for the lovely introduction, and thank you to Access Mob for inviting me here to speak today, as well as all of you for coming out to support the anniversary of the ADA. And don't mind me awkwardly holding my phone here. It has my notes on it, so I'll get started. So I'm especially happy to speak here today about mental illness and mental health, because the mental illness and disability communities are often separate, even though everyone has mental health and we're often working toward the same goals. The ADA has opened doors to education, healthcare, employment, and many other services for those living with a mental illness. And everything I say here today obviously applies to the community as a whole. Despite all of our progress, we still have a long way to go towards equality of opportunity. And I know that many of us still understand the tug of war that comes with all the progress we've made and everything to be happy about, as well as the things that we've been promised and have not yet received. Specifically today, I want to talk about opportunities with education and employment for those with a mental illness, things that affected me deeply during my childhood, and things that I still fight for today to get that equality of opportunity. So first, the ADA has made amazing steps towards educational opportunity and reducing the barriers for those living with a mental illness. Now you can request classroom, exam, and assignment accommodations to ensure that our youth, instead of being labeled at risk or with an emotional disturbance, can now work towards getting an education that will help them later in life to succeed. Sadly, many students are still subjected to disciplinary action, expulsion, and social isolation, but we've made amazing progress, and there are many people that continue to speak out against these things towards youth and other people with mental illness. I personally struggled with this issue when I was in high school, which was why I want to speak about it today. When I was in high school, I entered a severe depression that forbade me from getting out of bed in the morning and made it hard for me to show up to school, no matter how much I tried and no matter how much my family supported me. Despite being a straight A student with no disciplinary record, my school decided that the course of action would be to give me failing grades in my morning classes and send letters to my mother that threatened disciplinary action, fines, and court dates if I didn't start showing up for school. I had dreams of graduating in the top 10 of my class. I graduated 11th, by the way, and those were ruined by this, thank you. Those were ruined by this lack of accommodation, but it didn't stop me from seeking accommodations in college and graduate school and getting those degrees. Even though depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide, many youth still struggle to get these accommodations, especially when many youth have not yet found their voice to advocate for themselves. If I could go back today, I would scream at the top of my lungs about my civil rights, about my right to an education, but as a depressed 15-year-old, that was not in my vernacular. In addition, the ADA has made a number of improvements to our access to employment, especially through reasonable accommodations in work hour flexibility, working from home, access to quiet spaces, and stress-relieving breaks. The ability to work, whether it be full-time, part-time, or intermittently, can give someone with a mental illness a great deal of purpose in their life, as well as access to income when many disability benefits are not enough to live on comfortably. However, even though we've made amazing improvements in regards to our employment and workforce, the employment rate for individuals receiving public mental health services is still around 80%, according to a 2014 study by the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Mental illness, being an invisible disability that you often cannot see, puts the burden of disclosure on those who are living with the mental illness, since an employer cannot accommodate a disability that they are not aware of. Though it may seem like an easy task to disclose having a mental illness, the massive amounts of stigma in our society prevent many people from being open, even to their employers. I recently read an article in the Washington Times referencing the employee who recently took a mental health day and the positive response that she received from her boss. The columnist in the article called taking a mental health day a symptom of the, I quote, wussification of the American workforce, that you shouldn't parade having a mental illness because it's a personal weakness. These views are the damaging views that we continue to fight in this society, and that many of us have spoken up for, and that things like the ADA have made that we can fight against these. I know that it was hard for me to finally come out as having a mental illness in the workplace, because as a policy student, I feared the repercussions of stigma on my ability to get a job. However, once I looked at my reason for keeping quiet, I realized it wasn't because I was afraid to fail, but it was because I was afraid to label myself as mentally ill or disabled because of stigma and my own self-stigma. And that was not a good enough reason for myself to keep that quiet. So now, next week, I start a full-time job for the first time in 3 years, and I'm happy. So in conclusion, the ADA gives us access, not outcome. Having these accommodations don't guarantee our success in the workplace or in education, but they guarantee us access that our peers, that when we work just as hard as our peers in the workforce and in education, that we may in the future and today be granted the same outcomes. The ADA promised us that it should no longer be considered unnecessary or unimportant to guarantee basic civil rights to Americans with mental illness or disability, to understand that exclusion and inaccessibility are discrimination, and that stigma is a burden no one should bear. Thank you.
Apart from being a good friend, Corey Frazier is an amazing advocate who will be speaking about invisible disabilities. Corey is an autistic and queer non-binary activist and director of the Pittsburgh Center for Autistic Advocacy, an autistic-run advocacy group and justice organization. A passionate organizer, Corey has been doing justice work since they were a teen, mobilizing their classmates toward LGBT acceptance at their rural high school. They now serve on the mayor's LGBTQIA Council and the City County Task Force on Disability. Welcome, Corey.
Hello. First, I should probably apologize because I'm not good at celebrating. Everywhere I go is a protest. Just so you know, I can't stop. It's not always healthy. But yeah, like Elisa said, my name is Corey. I direct an organization called the Pittsburgh Center for Autistic Advocacy. We're a grassroots disability justice organization which is run completely by and for autistic people in order to fight the persistent kinds of ableism that affect us. And even though disabilities like mine, autism, mental illness, chronic fatigue syndrome, are often considered invisible disabilities, I've never really identified as invisibly disabled. My disabilities are not less visible than a mobility device or a physical difference. People like me spend our lives facing persistent ableism for the way our bodies move through the world. I've been harassed half my life for the way my hands tell the world what I'm feeling better than my face, the way my brain doesn't know exactly where I am in space, the fact that there are things I can't do and the reasons I can't do them are not always immediately obvious. I believe in the social model of disability. That is, I believe that the way my brain is different, from my sensory sensitivities and special interests to my impaired interoception and balance, is not the root of my difficulties as I move through the world. I am not disabled by my autistic brain. I am literally disabled by a society that is not built for autistic people and refuses to accommodate or acknowledge my needs. My needs are not invisible. Willful ignorance or outright refusal to meet needs is not the same as invisibility. Today, more and more of our schools have ramps that have been hard-won for disabled children to have access to the education they have a right to. Those ramps were guaranteed by the ADA, legislation that was passed the year before I was born. Not every school has one yet, and progress towards ending the more obvious kinds of disenfranchisement faced by our community has been slow. I can only guess how many years until the less obvious oppression sees the same kind of progress. The IDEA, the federal legislation that guarantees children with brains like mine an education, was passed the year my mom was starting kindergarten. But as I look forward to having my own children in the future, I can expect a child that shared my disabilities to be disproportionately suspended, pushed out of school, and criminalized. In fact, if you look at the school-to-prison pipeline, you find kids with brains like mine at every turn. Not only do those children have beautiful, divergent brains, but they're disproportionately black and brown. As we think about the invisible ways that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and mental illness, those of us who've been labeled invisibly disabled, have been largely left out of even the measured justice afforded to much of our community, we must also think about those who have not been even afforded that much, who our community has not even invited to the table. My disabilities have never been invisible. My twisting hands are tangible as anything. My stutter of my faulty words make a clear waveform. My social reasoning is opaque to me as it is to anyone else. So maybe the way ableism affects me is a little more insidious. But I'm curious about the people whose disabilities are invisible even in our own community. Our movement has gone into nursing homes and institutions, and yet the prison industrial complex remains one of the most lucrative service providers for people with developmental disabilities and mental illness. We've made progress shutting down state institutions across the state, but Allegheny County Jail faces the same allegations of abuse of prisoners with mental disabilities that it faced in 1840. Black and Indigenous men with disabilities remain the most likely populations to be murdered by police officers, and yet we invite the police into our community with open arms without thinking about the safety of our disabled siblings of color. Just like the people who perpetuate ableism against us, we all have work to do. The excuses of ideological invisibility must be shed. We cannot remain willfully ignorant while disabled children are pushed out of school and incarcerated. We cannot maintain the disability rights movement's outright refusal to see the intersection of ableism and racism as disabled Black and Indigenous men are murdered by the state and communities of color are underserved, paternalized, and criminalized by the same service providers that enable people who look like me to thrive. So today I want to ask honestly, who is invisible in our disability community? I'm autistic, I'm mentally ill, I'm queer and trans, and I'm white. And I'm standing here in front of you disabled, as plain as day. So look around and ask yourself, who is not here? Who is incarcerated? Who was not invited? Who did not feel safe? Who has our community not shown up for? And who is actually invisible in this community? Thanks.
Our next speaker is Mary Anderson Hartley, who will be speaking about parenting a child with a disability. While with the United Way of Allegheny County's 21 Enable initiative, she has helped to bridge the divide between youth and adult systems so that students with disabilities can transition more successfully to adulthood and employment, housing, and services. Additionally, Mary developed and organized Achieva's Disability Healthcare Initiative, a multi-pronged stakeholder effort in Pennsylvania to increase access to health care for individuals with disabilities. Mary Hartley.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for the organizers, especially Alyssa. Can we have a round of applause for them? Wonderful, thank you. So amazing. So I've been asked to talk about parenting a child with a disability. I'm speaking today as a parent and not connected to any organization. I always ask my son for permission to talk about him or write about him, and he has reviewed this first and says it's fine to share. I learned about parenting from my son. I have always loved him. He's a wonderful person. More than anyone in the world, he has taught me to be more open to everyone else. He's worked harder than any neurotypical person I know, and he deserves all the credit that he has earned for all his progress that he has chosen to make. While other parents were shuffling their kids from ballet to baseball, our parents shuffled 2 to 3 times a week from OT to speech and therapy. Never perfect, but always trying. We have worked hard as a family to ensure that he had the space to grow to be who he truly is, and to have high expectations, and to seek out adults with disabilities who could connect with us and show us the way. Regardless of how difficult they have been to navigate, I will never diminish the importance of what has helped our family most: the Medicaid services and the special education services he received. And yes, especially the protections of the ADA, which prohibits discrimination and ensures equal opportunity for persons with disabilities. We have to protect these rights. We have to also protect the entitlements and programs that support these rights in healthcare, education, employment, and independent living and services. You, all of you, have had a huge effect on the healthcare debate. You will all have a huge effect on every debate going forward. And one of us will come to rest on these protections of the ADA itself. We cannot rest. That my son has attended public schools, accessed the general curriculum with more supports at first and now less. That he sees a typical doctor and also a specialist. That he has received services at school and in our home and in community to get where he is today. And that he will likely qualify for benefits for rehabilitation to access employment. That he will go to college and get the supports he needs to succeed through the civil protections and benefits he needs. We need to fight to ensure that others are afforded the same rights and benefits. While other kids are finding the courage to ask a girl out on a date with my teenager has been building the most amazing, real advocacy skills. By the age of 10, Jack gave lectures on autism to his classmates. His personal advocacy was the change that helped him to develop his skills, to develop a key understanding of his own strengths and everything he would ask for. So today he can ask for what he needs. Jack is now 17, and after a semester of transportation training through the rights he enjoys, he has been riding the bus by himself down to school and back for almost 6 months. Right? What a freedom that is. His whole demeanor changed with that skill. Everything is possible for him. Today, though, on this day, the anniversary of the ADA, and voting in the Senate chamber to repeal protections on health care that will also cut significant funding from the Medicaid services necessary for support that is unique for people with disabilities. It is the difference between life and death, restriction and liberty. We will not tolerate the segregation of people with disabilities into nursing homes and institutions. I'm here to say that regardless of what happens out there, I'm going to continue to work with all of you as my leaders to ensure that people with disabilities are not denied that freedom. It is ridiculous that people with disabilities and their families should have to advocate for what should be a normal life, but it is the only thing. That being able to go to school and learn means freedom. That working in the world with everyone else is not just work, it means freedom. That being able to go into a store that serves the public and has no entrances with a step, that's freedom. That choosing to live in the home of your own choice with whomever you choose is freedom. That accessing college and further education and what you want to study means freedom. That choosing who you want to hang out with and where you want to be during the day by taking the bus is freedom. Let's continue to work together to make sure we can all have freedom. Thank you for your amazing work.
Our final pre-March speaker is Milt Henderson, who will be talking about the intersection of race and disability. Milt is an active member of the City-County Task Force on Disabilities. He also served on the statewide Independent Living Council Board, later becoming its president for 2 years. In addition, Milt has been actively involved with the Board of Disability Rights Pennsylvania and is a lifetime associate member of Keystone Paralyzed Veterans. Welcome, Milt.
As a closing gag, I want to thank you guys. I feel like Jay-Z today closing off for Public Enemy. If y'all know what Public Enemy is, woo, fight the power to be. I said it because intersectionality deals with controversy, and we're always fighting the power to be against the powers to be. First of all, I just learned about intersectionality myself recently, and I'm just going to ask, have you guys ever heard of the term intersectionality? I see some hands going up, which I can understand because it's kind of new to me too, so I had to read up on it. And it's an important discussion because it deals with discrimination that different groups face. Intersectionality is a concept often used in critical theories to describe the ways in which opposition, institutions, racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, exphobia, classism, and others are interconnected and connected to be examined by separately from one another. The concept first came from a legal scholar, Kimberly Crenshaw, in 1989, and is largely used in critical theories, especially feminist theories, when discussing systematic oppression when possible. Credited Kimberly Crenshaw for coining the term intersectionality and bringing the concept to a wider attention. So saying that, there is a lot of people that are discriminated against in many ways, and intersectionality bridges that to have people understand that discrimination comes in many ways, not just to one group or another, but it's something that we need to pay attention to. Intersectionality shows that everyone could be better, that every attempt at rolling back discrimination could work harder and be more inclusive. But it should also remind us that people themselves are more than a simple label. Sometimes we are labels and discriminated against because the way we look, the way we talk. And we have to work hard and much better to end discrimination. And the ADA has a lot to do with that because the powers that be still is not holding their end of the bargain to make some of the laws effective that they need to be. Like we're looking today, as where we're using some ramps to occupy sidewalks here. There's some intersections here that should have curb cuts. We should not have to use ramps to get up curb cuts. And this is 2017, and we're still fighting the powers to be in order for our independence. Every day, we look to be set back because we want our independence. We want the same thing, the same rights like anyone else. And again, we have to keep fighting, fighting, fighting. We may get weary, we may get tired, but I remember many years ago, I sat next to Bill Christener, and we was at a board meeting in Harrisburg, and they were actually trying to shut down the silk. And Bill said, "This is my life." And those words echo to me every day when I turn the TV on, I get up and realize I still gotta fight, fight, fight. And if I don't, I will be institutionalized or lying in my bed with bed sores. And it makes me angry, but I can't get mad. I got to find strength and keep pushing. I got to educate the powers to be because they don't know, and sometimes they don't want to know, and they forget real fast. But this is our lives, and we can't forget because if we do, they ain't think about us anyway. So speak out on the ADA, educate others, teach them about intersectionality. I would ask you guys to learn more about it. It's been updated just this April 2017. So it deals with sexism, discrimination, all those things that we fight for every day. So this is a new term, a new word that's out. Many people are not used to it and don't know, but it's a controversial word. That's why, I use the term public enemy because that was a very controversial group back in the late 70s, early 80s, but they were fighting for the same rights, civil rights, people's rights, and they were controversial, but they wouldn't hear their music. The powers that be said, don't play that. Like when we come out, the powers that be say, why y'all out here? We're out here because we're supposed to be out here. But they don't want to see us out here, so we got to keep voicing, keep speaking, keep doing rallies, keep knocking on legislative doors because they turn their head on us sometimes. And often they say, well, it ain't us, it's y'all. And it should be about all of us and not a group called y'all and sampling one group against another. I want to thank everyone who put this rally on, the march on, and thankful for the ADA and the passing of the ADA. And let's keep educating the powers that be. Let's keep being voiceful. Let's being out here knowledgeable. Let's stay in the streets, looking at sidewalks. Well, I come down Fifth Avenue and there's barriers that you can't even get across the street in. That should not be. We'll go down the street, you can't, that should not be. There should not be barriers where you can't get down the street. I live in Crawford Square. I chose to roll down the hill. When I roll down the hill, there's obstacles in my way. Cars are looking at me like I'm crazy. Police look at me like, you just break out the nursing home or something, dude? No, I'm trying to get downtown to a rally. That shouldn't be. So, again, we got a lot of work to do, so let's keep fighting. Let's stay independent. Let's stay together. Fight the powers to be. Who?
Thank you, Milt. Let me just, there we go. I mentioned earlier that I am a part of a disability rights group called ADAPT. While we're most famous for things like getting arrested, taking over buildings, and getting arrested while taking over buildings, one of the most powerful things that ADAPT does is march, loudly and visibly, every place we go. We do not hide our disabilities from the world. We celebrate our lives and our achievements. Now begins the march portion of our program. Welcome back, everybody. I hope that you had a fantastic time marching. I had a fantastic time in the air conditioning. Our next speaker is Dr. Josie Badger, who will be speaking about employment. In 2014, Josie founded J. Badger Consulting Incorporated, where she provides consulting services for organizations on transition and leadership development. She is the co-director of the National RSA Parent Training and Information Center, or RAISE, the Technical Assistance Center, and campaign manager of the I Want to Work campaign. So welcome, Josie.
Thanks for joining us on this beautiful day. And I think that, I know that I am talking to individuals who get what I'm saying, that I am preaching to the choir. And so if you're hearing this message might not be necessarily about you. But I believe that all humans have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I believe, thanks, I didn't actually write that. I believe that all individuals have the right to pursue a full range of opportunities. But I know that these rights are often unobtainable privileges for many of us out there. So unfortunately, there are many individuals who are outside the disability community who sadly believe that we have decided to live on benefits, to survive in poverty, living in the imprisonments of governmental benefits. They do not understand that for many of us, this is not a choice at all. That we as individuals with disabilities often must make that choice between vital, life-sustaining medical care or having a job They don't necessarily understand that they as individuals maybe have beliefs that do not support us as individuals to be employed, to have jobs, to live independently. And so I do not believe that although some things that have happened in the past few weeks may question this, I do not believe that most people wish ill on the disability community. I believe that we are not understood. I think that we must educate people that even though we might be disabled, that doesn't mean we're not employable. Just because we might need help getting out of the bed every morning doesn't mean to not watch out for us once we're up. And it doesn't mean that just because we need help accessing the world, that we can't change it. Thank you. So I'm here to talk about something I think is an obvious topic: employment. Employment of people with disabilities does not just mean something beneficial for those of us with disabilities. Employment for people with disabilities makes sense for everyone. It makes sense for employers. It makes sense for employees. It makes sense to legislators and taxpayers. And it makes sense for people with and without disabilities. As we become employed, not only are we able to surpass the confines of poverty, we are able to come off of governmental benefits. We're able to pay taxes, hooray, but we're also able to truly achieve what I think independence really is. So wouldn't it sort of be amazing to have policies that help everyone? I know that, right? I know that not everyone sees what I'm saying in the same way. I know people don't understand that you can be disabled and be employed at the same time. That you might need supports, but be employed. And we are still facing these barriers of employment every day. We're facing the barriers of discrimination, of outdated definitions of disability, of red tape from bureaucratic agencies. And it takes some of us more work to be able to work than it does just to work. And that doesn't make sense. So we need to teach everyone that it is worth the world, the society, our economy, for people with disabilities to work. Whether that means improving the benefits and allowing people with disabilities to earn money and still have medical insurance. It might mean making sure that transportation is available to actually get to work. But I know that I have a doctorate. I have my own business. I am campaign manager for an awesome group, the hashtag I Want to Work campaign. Yeah, they deserve a huge round of applause. And I know that combined, the amount of work that I spend just talking to agencies, fighting for services I know I have a right to, educating people about services that they are the ones that should be educating me, takes more time and energy than getting to be able to work in the first place. It should not take more time and energy to figure out if I can work as it does to work. So that's why we're here. We're here to make sure all people have access to work, to truly be able to be independent, to be a part of society. So what am I asking you to do today? So, number one, work. Just work. Tell people that you work. I don't care if you work at Walmart or the grocery store or if you're a campaign manager. Work. Tell people what you need to be able to work so that they know that we just don't show up at work looking as amazing as we do every day on our own. But I also want you to support our campaign team and our wonderful representative who's one of our main co-sponsors of our bill, which is Employment First Pennsylvania. We want you to talk to your legislators about why Pennsylvania should be an employment first state. If our legislation, which was recently sent out on the House and the Senate, is passed, it will require the departments to work as a team to improve the employment outcomes of people with disabilities. It will encourage the government to set employment goal of 7% of their workforce being people with disabilities. It will increase data to make sure that we're doing it right. And it will make sure there's oversight by people with disabilities and experts in the field to make sure that we are being heard and that we are working in Pennsylvania. The last thing that I want you to do, I see a few friends out there with these signs, okay? Number one, get selfies with them. We love them. Number two, though, we want you to go on Google, go online right now, and search PA Employment First, okay? And there is a change petition that will send information to our legislators, the governor, agencies, that this Employment First matters to you, that you believe that all people have the right to employment and therefore a right to a freedom of opportunities. So, thank you guys. Thanks for coming. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Josie. Our final community speaker is the Reverend Sally Jo Snyder, who will be talking about health care. Sally Jo has been an ordained minister in the United Methodist Church for over 25 years. Since March of 2007, she has been on staff with the Consumer Health Coalition, where she is the Director of Advocacy and Consumer Engagement. Sally Jo created and leads the very successful I Am Your Neighbor program, which advocates for rights, resources, room, and respect for persons with all types of disabilities. Sally Jo.
Thank you very much. Let's give it up for the mic guy who's worked hard all day today. Good work. And thanks, Elisa, for organizing this. Did a great job. It's important that we should have one of these every July 26th because no matter what tweets have gone out today, and I understand finally he's gone after the LGBT community with transgender and trying to get them out of the military, but we are still part of this grand democratic experiment, which is about the extension of rights until all are fully equal, right? It started with, the civil rights movement and black men, and then we increased to women. And then, 27 years ago, the Americans with Disabilities Act on this day was passed, and we've worked with LGBTQIA. But the reality is the ADA was a big deal, and it's important that we're here in this time and place to celebrate it. And if we would walk down the street and ask Joe and Jane Bag of Donut what the ADA was, I guarantee you they're going to say, oh, that's ramps, restrooms, and the really good parking places, right? It's about so much more than that, yes. It's about our rights. And a key right in the ADA is the right to access fully and freely to health care. Health care access is about our medical providers knowing us more than our hardships, more than our disabilities, more than our struggles. We're far more than that, right? We are people, and to know our stories and to know what we need. It's about treating the all of us wholly, who we are physically, who we are mentally, and you better believe who we are sexually, to know that and to treat the all of us every step of the way. It's about making, in our medical schools, having to take a rotation that focuses on persons with disabilities, yes? And it's about accessible exam equipment. That should not be a rarity. That should be a reality for every medical practice here in Pittsburgh and all over this region and all over this nation. But ultimately today, let's be honest, when you talk healthcare, we talk about the assault on the Affordable Care Act, and more than that, the assault on Medicaid. They have gone after us because they think we're an easy mark. That's the truth. But they don't know us. They don't know how fierce we can be, yes? They don't know how pushy we can be. They don't know how resilient we can be. They don't know how we're going to fight and fight and fight this. They don't know how we're going to persist and resist, and do not let them take away our rights to accessible, affordable health care, which is our right through and with Medicaid. Battle, folks, battle. This is far from over. Call to me. Keep calling them, even though we know what his vote is, but push, push, push. Call your state senator. We're curious to see where House Bill 59 goes. Call and fight, because they don't know us, but my charge to you is be known. Be known, and let them know you by your story, by your fierceness, by your focus, and by your fight. Let us battle.
So I literally have goosebumps right now from that, Sally Joe. I am a Medicaid user myself, so save our Medicaid. Now we have come to our keynote address. I couldn't be more pleased to introduce Representative Dan Miller. Representative Miller is the Pennsylvania State Representative for Mount Lebanon, Durmont, Castle Shannon, Baldwin, and parts of Brookline and Scott Township. I could sit here for hours talking about Representative Miller's accomplishments. He is a veteran, a community leader, and a father. He won the Medal of Merit in 2011 for his valiant attempt to save the life of a 3-year-old during a devastating house fire. As state representative, Mr. Miller has received awards for his advocacy for people with disabilities from Achieva, the Peel Center, Pittsburgh Local Task Force on the Rights to Education, and the Rehabilitation and Community Providers Association, and he has been awarded a lifetime membership in the PTA. What's most impressive to me, however, is a little something he founded called Dan's Fair, also known as the Children and Youth Disability and Mental Health Summit. Celebrating its 4th year this year, it's grown from 200 attendees to a sold-out 1,000 participants over 4 days of workshops, presentations, and resource fairs. I haven't even been able to go because I'm not cool enough to get a ticket, but maybe he'll remember me this year and get a ticket. Maybe. But worth a try. So it is my great honor then to welcome him to the stage, Representative Dan Miller.
Good afternoon. I tell you what, it's been a great afternoon, hasn't it? We have had a great couple hours, and I'm very honored to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation. I'll tell you, there's nowhere else I'd want to be on this beautiful afternoon here than with you guys and doing our march through Pittsburgh. And I'll tell you what, one of the things I liked the most, too, while we were out there marching was, sure, we got some attention while people were walking the streets, but we even got some more attention from people out the windows, looking at the signs, giving a thumbs up, and that's the type of impression that we need to make and our message that we need to send, no matter where they are, no matter in what building, no matter doing what work. We need to be sure they understand about the importance of the Americans with Disabilities Act and everything in regards to disability rights in this country. You know, I tell you, each one of us, of course, In my role as a state representative, and I appreciate the very nice introduction, some of which was overblown, but I appreciate it. We've taken on a bunch of causes, but I'm always amazed at what was done before as a way to challenge what should be done next. And just taking a moment to reflect on the ADA and its passage and the work that was done in order for it to become law is an amazing part of American history. It is an amazing part of the civil rights movement. It is an amazing part of what makes our country great. You know, and just taking a moment to reflect, one of the things that always amazed me about that time was the Capitol crawl. You guys remember the Capitol crawl? There you go. And I tell you what, my recollection of it is when that bill stalled and when some people thought it wasn't going to get over the hump, dozens and dozens of citizens, dozens and dozens of activists went to the Capitol. And they got there in their wheelchairs and they made a statement. And I don't know if you've been to D.C. Yep.
That's this arrest.
That's that arrest. But D.C. has a lot of steps. And going up to that Capitol building, they discarded those wheelchairs, and dozens of those citizen activists crawled their way up those 80, 90 steps to the top. Listening to some of the reports and things that I remember of it is that there was controversy, as there often is when it comes to activism. There was some debate about what was appropriate and what wasn't appropriate. But I'll tell you, what I recall the most, of course, is the actions of a young girl with cerebral palsy. And the camera that followed her up that flight of stairs as she crawled. And I don't remember the exact comments that she made, but the determination was sound, and she got to that top. And every one of them did. And in my recollection, that is what fueled the ADA to finally get through, if I recall, the House at the time, and on its way to President Bush. And I tell you, it is an amazing part. Somebody had made reference, I used to be a history teacher, that's true. I love telling stories by the way of actions by common people to do heroic things, to do brave things. And not only was the ADA fight itself a testament to the bravery of the activists and their loved ones who supported them, but it very much was in line with where our country needed to go and still needs to go to reach its full mission, to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to succeed and everyone has the opportunity to achieve the American dream. And there's a lot there. And we've taken some great steps over the last 20 years or so to open doors. There's no doubt from the time when many of us were in high school and elementary school, we've made great strides in education. We have made sure that there is a more inclusive experience. We've brought more kids home to where they should be, with their peers, with their neighbors, with their friends. And many kids with disabilities now are graduating at the top of their classes, with the ability to go to schools that are top-notch no matter how you look at it. It's tremendous. But what we're also dealing with is that as we are graduating those kids from high school, and as we have given them the supports, as we have invested in their future at that stage, we have done what all too often happens. We have walked away. We have not moved things forward. And like many people have referenced, we are graduating people to the couch. People of ability. People who can do fantastic things. And I'll tell you, as we sit here and reflect upon the 27th anniversary of the ADA, it is not lost on me, and I know many of you, that there is a battle going on right now in Washington, D.C. a battle that has major repercussions. Lost in the political fights of today are the battles won of yesterday. And now, when some people get upset about the Affordable Care Act, they, in their rhetoric, make no distinction between traditional Medicaid and Medicaid expansion. Now, don't get me wrong, I believe in Medicaid expansion. But even more so, I believe in the mission of Medicaid and the traditional Medicaid for the people that it serves. Without Medicaid and how it functions in this state, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives will be altered. And I tell you, we sit there just recently in Harrisburg, we had a debate on a bill. It was House Bill 59. If you don't know it, and you're looking for something to look at, take a look. And embedded in that bill, in my opinion, you will see the underpinnings of a great undoing. And you will see a human service code embedded in that bill that some would say, well, we must curb costs. The state must curb costs. And in this time of difficulty, it amazes me that where we start is we start curbing costs in Medicaid. And we start curbing costs on anything that relates to disabilities. And we start curbing costs on families that are raising a child with Down syndrome. And we start curbing costs on a family that has multiple children with autism. Because as you know, having a disability, everything is easy, right? So it's okay. You guys, we can take one other thing thrown on us, right? It's ridiculous. And while I struggle with words with some of my friends who did vote for that bill, it is something that we have to champion louder. It is a disastrous bill, and it represents a lot of what is being seen and talked about in D.C., and it has its champions in the halls of Harrisburg as well. Thankfully, one of those champions for that bill, that disastrous bill, is not Governor Wolf. And while I would not seek to make anything political, it is very important for people with disabilities and loved ones with disabilities to recognize who is fighting for you in the halls of D.C. and Harrisburg and wherever you're from. Because in reality for it, there's so much of your life is tied to those decisions. I would have loved to have seen many legislators here today. I'm glad to see all of you, but I would have loved to see more. There are many legislators on both sides of the aisle who care very much about you, your lives, your loved ones, and that's a good thing. No matter the side of the aisle, that's a good thing. But we also need to go beyond taking pictures with somebody who has a disability. I'll tell you, there's nothing that drives me up the wall more than seeing some photos taken from some elected officials who smile at a child with autism, who throw their arm around a vet who lost a leg, who get down real close and smile next to somebody with cerebral palsy, and then votes against their health care, and votes against their life supports, and votes against measures that allow people to work. There's nothing more frustrating than seeing that. And they must be called out for that. I've never met a person with a disability come up to me and said, you know what I need? I need a picture with Dan Miller.
I need a picture with you.
All right, one. And listen, that's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. That's a good thing. And but it's not what is going to put bread on people's tables, not what is going to make people live an independent life. It's not what's going to raise the opportunities for people. We have to go beyond the pictures for our politicians. No pictures with politicians if they're not voting and recognizing the issues that are going to allow people better access to their lives. There's no point about it. We have to be sure that this message is heard loud and strong. I'll tell you with it, you know, I mentioned Medicaid as a moral compass. I've told you a bit about where some people in Harrisburg believe we need to start cutting, which is on your backs. We know that there is an underfunded system that exists now. No matter how it works for almost every disability class that we have, it is an underfunded system that is quote-unquote supporting you and the family and so forth. You know, I sit there, again, my experience tends to be very, very much in the intellectual disability side. My experience tends to be very much based with autism. And it never ceases to amaze me that the care and support that is needed is often put on the backs of 22 to 30-year-old young women who get paid nothing and hope that their car has gas in it and nothing breaks on their way to help that child learn to talk. Because they know that if they don't make it on that day, if something happens to them, if they have the audacity to get sick in a job that doesn't sometimes cover health insurance for them, then that child's progress is set back. Then the family's whole schedule is amiss. And in some cases with it, it's very detrimental in the sense that the child themselves doesn't know how to handle the hole in the schedule when that TSS can't make it. But I tell you over and over again, when you talk to the people, those providers who are providing care, those direct support providers across the state, they'll say the same thing. I love my job. I want to be involved. I want to do this. But I can barely put gas in my car. Because whether you're talking about Medicaid rates set in Harrisburg or limits put on by the state of Pennsylvania with it, curbing these rates, curbing these numbers is the exact opposite of what is needed in the system. In order for a child at 4 who cannot speak, who has autism, to be able to reach his full potential, we need that early investment. In order for someone with a physical disability to be at work, I'll tell you what, I had this one not too recently. In order for a person who is visually impaired, how about you need a civil service exam that they can actually be able to read? It sounds simple, but aspects of our system needs to be updated, aspects of our system needs to be upgraded, and people who are embedded in helping these things get done need to be paid appropriately for their life-altering work that they do. But it's all about priorities. It's all about priorities. So whether you're talking about DC or whether you're talking about Harrisburg, every time that you come across an elected official, the question has to be, where are your priorities? What are you looking to do? It can't be about the picture. If the picture is the priority, then you know you have a problem. We need to have elected officials and leaderships from the speaker on down who prioritize disability issues in this state, who recognize that we are all better when we are as independent as possible. The system works where more people who can work, can get to work, and can be allowed to thrive in that job. Every statistic you see will show you that people with disabilities outperform their atypical peers when given the opportunity. So what do you want to do? We need everybody to get to work, and that's why I support the bill, the Employment First initiative that was talked about. It's a first step. We still have more to do on that front. But I'll tell you with it, my friends, it is a difficult time, in my opinion, for disability advocates in this state and country. I think in some ways we have lost an aspect of our morality with how we prioritize these issues. And that means it is incumbent upon us to remember those steps that people crawled up in 1990. We have to find our own version of that. We have to find our own way to connect and remind people. Yes, it's challenging times for the state, but the state budget cannot be balanced on the backs of the disabled, those who love them and those who support them. And that's what we have to be sure happens now. And if you don't think the debate is going on as we speak, You're fooling yourselves. That bill that I talked about, that House Bill 59, that didn't materialize out of thin air. That was crafted long and intentionally. The debate that's going on in D.C., while some would say they never had a plan in the first place, the direction and rhetoric that they have, it's intentful. It's meant to do something. It's not by happenstance. So we need to fight. So my friends, I'll tell you this in closing. I'm very thankful, again, to be here with you. I'm very thankful to walk the walk with you today. And I'm very thankful to play a small role in the team that advances these issues in the state of Pennsylvania. But I'm going to ask you to, unfortunately, go home and do a little more. I'm going to ask you to go home and think about those steps. I'm going to ask you to go home and whether you connect with your legislators on phone, Facebook, email, we're going to need you to double down. Everyone here, everyone with a disability of any type has a support system that needs to be engaged. For my family with it, when we have an issue, it involves not just me, but my wife. Not just my wife, but my son's grandmother. Not just a grandmother, but the grandfather. Not just a grandfather, but my sister. Not just my sister, but my son's cousin. It doesn't matter. That's the support system. And that's what we need to engage when we're fighting for disabled rights anywhere at any time. We need everyone in to recognize that it's all of our fights. That the difference here and what we need to happen about disability rights here is an American issue. God bless. It's an American issue. We cannot let our eyes be taken off the ball with the distraction of tweets of insanity. We have to be sure that we stay focused on where the priorities are for our government. So listen, please go home and be sure to think about those things. I know many of you here send me emails all the time and so forth. I appreciate very much. Again, I'm always honored to be with you. I look forward to what our next steps will be, what our next fight will be, what our next march will be. Thank you very much for being here. Have a good day.
No problem. Oh, that was wonderful. Thank you so very much, Representative Miller. That was incredible. Alas, it has come time to bid everyone adieu. I hope that what you've heard today will inspire you to keep the movement going so that when we gather together next year, we will have even more to celebrate. To that end, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my organization. It's called Access Mob Pittsburgh, and we, with some amazing people, put this little shindig together. Access Mob Pittsburgh is dedicated to improving the accessibility of the city of Pittsburgh using positive measures, economic incentives, education, and advocacy. We're a small organization, but we're always looking for a few good people to join us and come out and advocate and just have a good time. There are a few events coming up which naturally I have not yet put on the website because I've been a little busy with this little event that's going on downtown today. But if you check back in a couple of days, it'll all be up there. If you want their Access Mob cards over by the water stations, so you can grab one on your way out. I would like to thank the wrong speech. I would like to thank a great many people. Thank you to the organizing committee, Debbie Cherry, Dale McNutt, Richard Meritzer, Caitlin Buss, Alyssa Seifer, Joy Dorr, Sean Hartley, Jay Hornack, Tommy Indig, Miriam Kenton, Georgianne Lingenfelder, Casey Madden, Teo Neuendorfer, Susan South, and Zion. Thank you to our sponsors at FISA, Startup Town, Giant Eagle, the City County Task Force on Disabilities, Pittsburgh Lawyers Guild, MetaMesh, our friends at Razoo, and especially our gold level sponsor at UPMC. And thank you to everyone who has contributed in any way. For those who are still interested, we're going to continue to accept donations via our Razoo site. You can see the program. There's information there. On a personal note, thank you, Mom and Dad, for just your unwavering support and love and just being the best parents anyone could ask for. Thank you to my brother, and his name's Bernie, so I'm sorry, Bernie, for all the Feel the Burden jokes I've made at your expense, but they were worth it. But I love you all so much. Thank you to my friends. I have the best friends that anyone can ask for, so thank you. And finally, Dee, I love you with all my heart. Thank you for being my rock and for being here for me today. I love you. So I do a mic drop, but I don't want to break anything, so peace out! That's all, folks.